fucking something stabbing me in this shirt. Very annoying. Okay. Sure, I'll be Jack today. I don't care.
Tim Miller from the Bulwark here with the man of the moment, Mehdi Hasan, founder of Zeteo News, and he was just in the modern era, the modern gladiatorial ring with 20 crypto-Nazi youth arguing about the future of the country. Mehdi, how you doing? You're alive?
I'm alive, a little bit of PTSD. It's been a few weeks. Obviously, everyone saw it on Sunday. It was taped a few weeks ago. I was kind of waited with bated breath as to what it would look like, what the reaction would be. The reaction has been insane in good ways and bad. But yeah, it's good to speak to you, Tim. I haven't really spoken about this.
The elephants didn't stampede you. You know, we're alive. I guess for people who didn't watch it, me and JVL did a little breakdown of some of the highlights yesterday. We couldn't wait for you to come on today. It was too good. And so some of our viewers will have already seen it. But for those who haven't, it was a Jubilee. It was pitched as Mehdi. What was it? 1 progressive versus 20 far-right conservatives. Talk to people about what it was.
Yeah, so that was the pitch. I did this show because I'd seen some of the Jubilee debates with Ben Shapiro and Charlie Kirk and Candace Owens and Jordan Peterson. They haven't had that many progressives or leftists. It's been mainly kind of right-wingers sitting in the middle of this circle surrounded by, I would argue, good faith debaters from the progressive side. Yeah. Jordan Peterson had a bunch of 20 atheists who kind of engaged in good faith about arguments about God and morality and ethics. And I decided to do it because I thought, number one, let's have a progressive on there. This seems to be a platform with a lot of viewers. I noticed that my kids and nephews and nieces all seem to know what Jubilee was. There's a massive Gen Z and teenage audience for this stuff. So I thought, okay, not the kind of audience that watch political content on the Bulwark or Zeteo. Very young audience, worth reaching out to. And then I thought, look, I love to argue, Tim, as you know. I wrote a book about debating. I don't tend to turn down invitations to debate unless it's in bad faith, or I try not to debate fascists and racists. So I was surprised, to put it mildly, when the quote-unquote Trump supporters I thought I was debating actually just came out and said, no, we're fascists, we're racists.
Yeah, and in case people think you're overstating it, we're only going to do one clip from it. People can go watch the whole thing if they want to, but I wanted to do my favorite clip because I thought it was the most telling, and your response was pretty raw, actually. It was kind of un-Mehdi. It was not your Oxford Mehdi. It was like a, what? Is this fucking real response?
It was WTF. It was WTF Mehdi.
Yeah, so let's watch it.
Well, my name's Connor. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Took a little bit of a doubt there.
Did you lose your job, Connor?
How would Connor's America look? What would it look like?
Well, quite frankly, I think we would deport people who shouldn't be here.
No, I didn't ask about deporting. What does the government look like?
What does the government look like?
Yeah.
I would say, quite frankly, it's under sort of benevolent leader, such as
Where does he
Franco.
come from?
It could be a kind of an aristocratic class. Could be someone
who picks the autocrat?
Frankly, the people. I mean, we could hold a vote on it. Kings were
isn't that democracy?
Well, sure. You can have a vote to get to that state.
And then no more votes afterwards?
Absolutely.
Wow.
100%.
Wow. And if that autocrat kills you and your family, you're fine with that?
Well, I'm not going to be a part of the group that he kills, because that's the whole thing.
How do you know?
Carl Schmitt
autocrats tend to kill everyone,
Carl
even their own
Schmitt makes
supporters.
this point very well in his work. It's
my
the
mic
enemy
went down
distinction,
to
right?
like
You
Carl
liberals,
Schmitt, the Nazi theoretician.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't care.
Are you fan of Nazis?
I don't.
Check.
I frankly don't care being called a Nazi.
I didn't say that. I didn't actually say that. I said, are you a fan of the Nazis?
Well, they persecuted the
I
church
put it up
a
to
little bit.
100.
I'm not a fan
It went
of that, but
went down
the
to
persecution of the Jews.
Well,
80.
I mean, I certainly don't support anyone's human dignity being assaulted. I'm a Catholic.
But
And
you
so
don't condemn Nazi persecution of the Jews.
I
down to
think that
75
there
just now.
was a little bit of
What is happening?
persecution and
We
stuff
may
like
have
that,
to
which is
rename
bad,
this show
but-
because you're a little bit more than a far-right Republican.
Don't move.
Hey,
What
can
the
I
fuck?
say?
I think you can say I'm a fascist.
It went down
Yeah,
to
I am.
94. 76. I'm not touching anything.
Absolutely.
I'm just checking who's clapping just to get my set of where everyone
Because
is on this.
I'm just checking who's clapping because I was checking who was clapping. So less of
That was very early on in the episode. I mean, this is like a 2-hour debate that you're sitting for in this warehouse, and this was very early on. I think he was maybe the 4th or 5th guy to come up to the table. So I was like, okay. At that point, this was a moment where I knew, okay, these are not just your average Trump supporters.
But are they? I guess I don't know. What was your sense of the room? There was sort of a comedic element. I'm just counting 4, 5, 6. There are 20 of them. It felt like half of them were pretty much explicitly fascist or white nationalist adjacent to me. I don't know. What about you?
Without a shadow of a doubt, the majority were. There's a moment in the recording, and a lot of these clips have gone viral in recent days. That's how Jubilee works. One clip that hasn't gone viral is probably the most fascinating part. There was an undocumented immigrant. There was a guy who was a dreamer.
Watch this.
Covered in tattoos, which is a brave move these days, given ISIS sending people to El Salvador, as you and I know, Tim, based on tattoos. And he came to be this far-right conservative. He volunteered to self-identify as a far-right conservative, but then sat across the table from me and talked about how he didn't agree with the racists in the room and that his parents came and they came illegally, but they did what they had to do for their family. It was very sad. It was very touching, actually. But it was interesting that kind of he stood out. And I looked around the room and I was like, you're a brave guy, because I'm sure the majority of the room want to call ICE on you right now. So yes, the majority of them were white nationalists, Christian nationalists, fascist adjacent. What was interesting about it is that guy there who you just played the clip of, he hesitates to say his name and then says Connor. And I say, why are you hesitating on your own name? Oh, because I have a pseudonym online. I'm already thinking, okay, so this guy he's not an ordinary member of the public. He's some kind of influencer, blogger, activist. And then it turns out he's some guy called Pines App. I discovered it in the last 48 hours. And, he's well-known anti-Semite, well-known friend of Nick Fuentes, well-known grouper. Not sure how he got past the quote-unquote vetting. And yet, interestingly, in the last 24 hours, I believe he's gone on some podcast and said that he's lost his job. Since going on YouTube and telling millions of people he's proud to be a fascist. So, sense of the room was one self-professed fascist, a bunch of other fascist sympathizers, fascist adjacent, white nationalists. Yet they weren't. I know it's easy to go, all Trump supporters are Nazis, fascists, which isn't true, obviously. They do obviously have sympathies with the far right. That's why they vote for Trump. But what was interesting about these people is they were clearly more than just average members of these were people committed to the cause. It became very clear to me, Tim, very early on. I went with 4 claims about crime, about the Constitution, about immigration, and about Gaza. They didn't give a fuck about 3 of them. They only cared about the immigration piece. That is what they were there for.
Yeah, and I kind of want to explore that a little more. I'm curious, though, because I did watch the part of the video with the undocumented guy. I wanted a little postscript of that. Did it feel like maybe this was an eye-opening moment for him to realize that he was in league with this group?
Yeah.
I don't.
It felt a bit. I got a sense of that sitting across the table from. I didn't talk to any of them afterwards. I got the hell out of Dodge. But
okay. No, you didn't have. You didn't have a glass of tea with the.
I didn't
fascists?
know. But to quote Donald Trump on Ghislaine Maxwell, I wish him well.
Wish him well. Yeah. Same. Your point about the immigration
Maybe that
thing,
was it.
Obviously, that is the animating issue of the group.
Stop.
But
what the fuck?
To me, the thing why this was.
Fucking stay there. Don't adjust when I start talking. I didn't tell you to adjust. Why? Why are you doing this to me? Here is where I want you. Why? I don't get it. Let me refresh this page. Maybe it has something to do with this page. Okay. Don't move. Keeping my fucking eye on you.
I hope eye-opening to people, because I think that there is like this notion of it still persists somehow, even if Donald Trump has won twice. Like, yeah, there's these like kind of extreme corners or whatever, and they're not that representative, but like they're overrepresented online, and it's like, well, I mean, I don't know about that. I think that like that immigration is extremely animating among. If you go to just a Turning Point USA event or a Charlie Kirk event, like that is an animating issue. It matters. After the clip I shared yesterday, a friend of mine texted and said that there's a son or nephew, like also cited Carl Schmitt recently. Like this stuff gets into the ether. These guys who are all debating you are now posting online. So I'm seeing their accounts. They have huge followings. They're followed by elected officials, prominent Republicans, right? And it's not like
I think this guy I think is followed. The guy we just saw a clip of who claims to have lost his job, Connor the fascist. I believe he's followed by one of the candidates for Texas AG.
Yeah. I mean, so I guess my point is, I don't know. Did you come away? And obviously, there's the experience of being in the room, but like, just about the broader project, did you come away a little bit more alarmed about like the degree to which Stephen Millerism, if you will, has really kind of infected like a pretty significant portion of the young right?
It's interesting you mentioned Stephen Millerism because this was filmed in LA. And I remind people that this was not filmed in the Deep South. This was filmed in LA. A little bit alarmed is an understatement. I came away pretty stunned, and it takes a lot to make me speechless, Tim. Many people who know me know it takes a lot for me not to have anything to say. And I remember just leaving there with a producer of mine and with the security guard who came with me, who's also a friend of mine, who provided security. He turned to me and he said, that was not a TV recording. That felt more like a low-key KKK rally. And I think this is the thing now. This is the masks off, hoods on moment that we're living through right now, where a lot of these people thought this stuff 10 years, 15 years ago, but they wouldn't have had the guts to come on YouTube and say it. They wouldn't have the guts to, this guy's lost his job and he's surprised by it, but many of the rest of them are not going to lose their jobs, right? Okay, Pine's out,
whatever. He's going to do fine. He's going to raise money.
He's going to do fine. But the rest of them who said crazy shit, there was a white genocide guy. There was a great replacement guy. There was all the hits. There was all the far-right hits. And, you and I follow this stuff closely so we can identify it from far-right. Like, for me, the minute he said, I'm being replaced, I understood. All right, replaced. Tick. Okay. These are not ordinary people just expressing legitimate concern about the wages brought down by migrant labor from South America. These are people who are ideologically committed, as you say, to Stephen Millerism, to Carl Schmitt, to a great replacement, to General Franco. I mean, I have debated and talked with a lot of far-right freaks over the years, but that's the first time I've had it in the live in the field example of we need a General Franco for the United States.
Yeah, well, this is why I get to play the former conservative role here, Mehdi. One of the big splits between William F. Buckley and now I'm blanking on the guy's name. His kid ended up running a media watchdog group. It'll come to me. Was over Frank. Like it was back then, the original National Review days. There was like a split over a pro-Franco faction and kind of like a soft Franco faction. So it doesn't come from nowhere. I want to say I've been watching some of their follow-ups, which I think is as alarming as the actual exchange. I'm sure you've seen some of the stuff online. You see this one, a guy who's at Chaotic Hermes. He posted a picture of himself, and he said, "I didn't go up during Jubilee because Hasan smelled like shit." Did you see that one? Several other guys have.
I can't reveal what happened in terms of the taping and editing, but that's fundamentally untrue. What he just said there. Not just the insult, but what he said about what happened at the filming.
Got it.
He was a super racist dude.
So there was racist shit that didn't make the cut.
can't comment on the.
Oh yeah, you can't.
You'd have to ask Jubilee.
Yeah, well, that's Jubilee. Okay, sorry, I don't want to get you in trouble there. There's enough racist shit on what made the cut that doesn't really matter, I guess, is one
Indeed.
question.
I mean, and look, I've been torn on this stuff. Look, I'm on the left, Tim. Left has a very strong no platforming of fascist principle. I operated in the UK. I've operated in the US. There are many interesting people I've not had on Zateo who I could easily have and get lots of clicks from simply because I just don't want to platform a far-right fascist. So for me, it was a very eye-opening moment where I kind of said, I don't want to debate you, Connor, because you're a fascist. You just told me you're a fascist. We've got to wrap this up now. But what was interesting is, obviously, on the left, there's been a lot of criticism. If you go on Blue Sky, for example, a lot of liberals upset with me for participating. And I get it. Look, I'm torn on this. There is a school of thought that says
there are people upset at you for participating.
Yeah, I think I think there are two views, right, Tim? There is one school of thought on the liberal left which says you cannot platform these people because no matter how much you beat them up, no matter how much you mock them or humiliate them or make fools of them, they make content out of this. They move the Overton window. They launder their far-right views in front of a mainstream audience, right? I believe that is a legitimate argument, something I sympathize with myself. On the other hand, the counter-argument is these people are out there. They exist. Jubilee is a massive platform. Whether I take part in it or not, it's getting tens of millions of views. Maybe it's time to show up and mock these people and point out what freaks they are. So I get both sides of the argument. I do believe they are two legitimate views on that debate, and I'm torn on it because you said, look at their accounts right now. The guy with the baseball cap who told me to get out, who pretended he was an economist, like he's loving this moment. You go look at his social feed. His friends are like, you owned Mehdi, you won that thing, and the algorithm allows you, as you and I both know, to live in your own little bubble and be reinforced in your own wrongness.
Yeah, and it is wild. Like, I mean, some of these people, like the guy you're referencing, you had this fight over immigration, and his, like, the key argument he had was that wages dropped, like, 0.5% for Americans if you look at those certain studies. And, like, there are posts I've seen of, like, him being like, I owned Mehdi over this with 11,000 likes. So I guess I do understand that. I guess my question is, I don't know that the answer is letting it foment. And I guess I do think this is a legitimate question. I saw JVL and I were talking about yesterday. I'm wondering what your thought is. I mean, like, what is a realistic effort for de-radicalizing? Like, it probably isn't you, to be honest, right? Like a brown immigrant, like debating them in Oxford style.
Brown Muslim immigrant journalist. I tick all the boxes.
Yeah, probably not going to be the person that wins them over, but I don't know. And like, probably the guy that like is citing Carl Schmitt is not going to be de-radicalized, right? But the people consuming this, right? Like, this is the thing that I worry about. And I do think it's very different. Like, I just look back to being a young Republican, age 17, who would sometimes do contrarian stuff that was outlandish or whatever to get attention. I'm guilty. I did it. But, like, it would have been hard for me even to find ideas like this. Right? Like, you're literally like, I'm going to go through the library and start looking for Nazi, philosophers. Like, it would have been hard to find people who are like, yeah, America should actually be a Catholic autocracy. Right? Like that just wasn't in the dialogue, right? And so that stuff is a way of seeping in. And I feel like engaging with it and trying to demonstrate its absurdity is as good of an idea as any, but I don't know. Maybe that is wrong. I'm genuinely perplexed by the challenge.
I agree with you. It's really difficult. I've tried to have this. Look, take election denial, Tim, right? I was one of these people who said I will not have election denials on my show at MSNBC since I joined Zateo. Like, that was the principle. But then 2024 came along, and you kind of have to drop that a bit because, like, that's the entire Republican Party. Oh, you're not going to be able to interview a Republican. So, like, the purity tests don't work in an age where things are so fluid. The extremes. Look, I'm not a guy who tends to quote neoconservatives like Max Boot. But Max Boot, I think, wrote a piece for the Washington Post a while back, and he had a phrase that stuck with me. He said there was a time when the Republican Party was a mainstream Republican Party with a white nationalist fringe. It is now a white nationalist party with a Republican fringe. I think that's a good description of where we are. And that at some point you have to acknowledge that, and then you have to decide, what are you going to do about that? We have a two-party system. You simply cannot exclude one party from all airways, social media debates. That's impossible. So, yes, as much as I want to kind of contain these people, I do think two things that jump out to me in terms of de-radicalization. One is we need political mainstream parties that can offer people actual vision, hope, substance, right? Technocrats running the Democratic Party or the Republican Party is not going to work. Donald Trump succeeded because whatever you think of the man, he gave people some kind of vision. It's a shitty, fascistic, reactionary, dishonest vision, but it is a vision. And Democratic Party leaders simply cannot match that. And that's just a fact of where we are right now. And that's one point. The other point I think is, I do think a lot of this leads back to social media. I do think Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk and the rest of these guys have a lot to answer for, right? We know that Zuckerberg and others twiddle with the algorithm to allow these people to get away with this shit. We know it during COVID, we know it before COVID, we know it election times. And again, that's not about censorship or Twitter files. It's about amplifying the worst possible people. It's about going on YouTube, where you and I are talking right now, and having an algorithm that, multiple studies have shown, a kid starts watching one video and then goes down a far right rabbit hole. Yeah. That is not organic. That is not something that has to happen. And I do think that is something that should have been regulated or dealt with by the government a long time ago. And I think big tech
and I don't
has
know,
a lot to answer for.
Breaking it up at some level. I'm just trying to think around there. There's not a lot of great. I'm trying to think of a great example of de-radicalization efforts. You know what I mean? I don't know. I know this example, but in the Muslim world, radical Islam, it's hard to think of a really good example. And I guess post-war Germany, there was, but we need to have a Holocaust before these people get de-radicalized. That to me is the frustrating part. Is it's engagement with it. You do wonder if it boomerangs at some level.
It does. That is a worry. The other problem is, of course, as long as social media is out there, the thing about let's take Nazi Germany, right? You lose a war, you have an occupying army, and then you change the curriculum, you change the people in charge of government, etc., etc. What they didn't have in post-war Germany was TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, right? Right now we have the constant, non-stop, relentless attack on our attention and on our brains. And therefore, it's like when people say, well, you got to go on Fox to have the debate. And I'm like, all right, Bernie goes on Fox or Buttigieg goes on Fox. But then you have 12 hours of Fox coverage undermining what was just done in the de-radicalizing. And I think it's the same problem, right? You can do all you want in the public space, in education, in schools, in Congress. What do you do about the non-stop, the people who are online 24/7 being served up this shit? 24/7. That is what
control
you have
of information, and that really is. And it's not modern, but that really would be the more of a comparison. I mean, Hitler took control of the information ecosystem in Germany in the schools, and if you look at a lot of the if you look at Assad, Syria, right? There wasn't a lot of opportunity to hear conflicting information if you're a young person. So I don't know.
It's not even about controlling it, again, because the people say, oh, you're trying to censor us. It's not about that. It's about the fact that we have a social media infrastructure right now which amplifies this stuff. Right. That's the bigger issue. And that's why I'm getting criticized, because people are saying, well, you went on Jubilee, and Jubilee's entire business model is to do this for clicks. And I get that, but it's much broader than Jubilee, right? This is about...
I don't know. I think it's important. I think it's important for people to see this stuff. I don't know that your interview is the thing that's going to de-radicalize.
No, I agree with it in terms of seeing it.
Parents should be eyes wide open, right? I mean, fuck.
Yes.
Look, you and I aren't going to agree on every element probably of the campus protests around Gaza. If parents were upset about some of the extreme elements of that, everybody should be freaking aware of the extreme elements that are happening all across the country in these little MAGA groups, because the Groypers are not just 8 dudes anymore with sunglasses.
No, and I think, look, as you mentioned campus protests, let's just take a quick look at the Palestine issue. I talked about Gaza on that show, right? That was the one area where people didn't really want to come up to the table. They didn't want to debate me because they don't agree with Trump's support for Israel,
and they don't some agree of them with Trump's support.
Well, that's what I'm coming to. They don't agree with Trump's support for Israel, not because they're pro-Palestinian or pro-international law. It's because they're anti-Semites. I can't say what some of the comments were made off camera, but blatant anti-Semitism was expressed. So this idea, and you see the woman, I think her name now, I've discovered her name is Sarah something or another, the blonde woman who also appeared in Sam Cedar's show. She made it very clear Trump is being controlled by one religious group. And I was like, really? Do you want to tell us which group that is?
The Methodists? Is it the Methodists?
So to take your point even one point further, it's not just, parents are worried about what's happening on campuses, they should be worried about social media. How about all of us who claim to be worried about anti-Semitism? We should be worried about old-fashioned anti-Semitism. While we obsess over, is anti-Zionism, anti-Semitism, was the placard on campus mean to Jewish people or just Israelis? How about looking at the OG anti-Semitism, the right-wing, hey, the Holocaust never happened, hey, Jews are controlling all of us, and all of that bullshit. That is that we should be eyes wide open about. And I think that is one place where I will defend the whole Jubilee thing and my participation 100%, which is there has been far too much denialism, as you said at the start of this conversation, about how big a group this is. Whether it's 20%, 30%, 50%, it's a big chunk, and it is growing online.
Yeah. I thought there were some really bad placards at the protests, but even still, this group and the way to which they're organizing, the way to which they're organizing, is bad. Okay, I want to give you one more swing at the at the how this intersects with the Israel issue, because there's another thing that's been viral since you did the Jubilee thing, and I think that they relate in a way that I just want to explain. So these two guys called the Nelk Boys, the Canadian actually, they're extremely stupid. I just want to be honest about this. Like some of the people you debated, okay, I mean whatever. They had high SAT scores. Let's just put it that way, right? Like they at least are reading the books that they're citing. At least some of them. There were maybe some so-so ones too. The Nelk Boys are not that. They literally came up as like modern day shock jocks. They interviewed, boxers and stuff, and they do fart jokes. Pranks, like that's them. Okay. And then they did an interview yesterday with Bibi Netanyahu, and they get totally co-opted by Bibi, and Bibi just snows them. And you can kind of see it in their face. Like they don't know. They even say they don't know. And I thought that was interesting because when I watched that, it reminded me of your Jubilee, and I think it can be like telling for us as we try to figure out how to maybe disaggregate these groups a little bit and de-radicalize some people, is that in the Jubilee, there were some pretty smart fascists. And then there were some people that felt like they were getting drug along, And anyway, I felt like that dynamic was pretty similar to the BB and Nelk Boys dynamic. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that or on the Nelk Boys thing overall, but you can feel free.
I think you're right about the fact that the Nelk Boys are not ideologues, right? They're not quoting Carl Schmitt for sure. What they are, though, is they are on the right. They're proudly on the right. They endorse Trump. They had Trump on the show well before Netanyahu. And we've seen that in a lot of this space. We've seen it with the Joe Rogans and the Theo Vons and some of these people. And I think you're right. I think the co-opting is quite interesting. I've been very depressed. People are like, the podcast election. I think the big downside, as someone who's made my own name doing tough interviews, what's bothered me most is the podcast space has allowed politicians of all stripes, but especially on the right, to go into safe space and not have
You got frame lags. Yeah, it happens. I'm working on a bunch of stuff, including my mic picking me up properly. Why is the U.S. media appreciating? I don't know. I haven't seen much, honestly, about it.
Ask any kind of difficult question, not just difficult questions, but even talk to people who know what the fuck's going on, right?
Yeah.
Have any
not even challenge them, like blatantly lie, like if Bibi's like, "Oh, Iran was about to bomb Germany and America," and the guys were like, "Really?
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Tell me more, exactly." And I think we've seen that a lot. We saw that with Theo Von, who I think is good-natured. I think he's got good intentions on Gaza. He said a lot of good stuff about it, but then he sits down with a Trump or a JD Vance or a Jared Kushner, and clearly, that he's not equipped for that conversation. And I think, look, the problem with all of these people is, to go back to the point, it is the attention economy. They do have a lot of supporters and followers. And it is, again, this is going to sound cliched and patronizing, but it is the dumbing down of America. To go back to your point, it is kind of stupid rules. It is an episode of Idiocracy. And it is a very American phenomenon. I know it is global as well, but it's very American. And I think the reaction I've had from foreigners watching Jubilee, who've been texting me, to Americans watching Jubilee, has been really interesting. The foreigners are all like, that can't be real. Those can't be Americans. What are you doing there? Get the hell out of that country. And it is, I think we've got to talk about.
What do you say to them when they say that? Is that, are you kind of like, maybe you're right?
I say I'm here until Stephen Miller and Donald Trump come with the denaturalization police. I mean, by the way, the real arc of that episode, that Jubilee episode, is what, at least 5 of the 20 of them told me to get out at some shape or point, that I shouldn't be living there. And it's kind of like, well, this is useful, because at least we don't have to pretend.
You're stealing jobs from good, honest, white Americans like the Nelk Boys, who could be doing these interviews with Bibi Netanyahu.
But it really, that is really revealing, because at least it just kills the lie that this is about illegal immigration. No, it's not. At least we can be honest on Jubilee and have the people say, really, it's to do with the fact that I will never be American for them.
All right, one last thing, because I think, again, as I mentioned, I think we disagree on some of the specifics of this, but just from a political strategy standpoint, your point about how they didn't want to fight with you on Gaza, and I don't know if you've seen, but the Nelk Boys have gotten huge pushback,
Backlash,
from their audience over not being harder on Netanyahu. I do wonder if the Gaza is a little bit of a wedge that I don't know could be used in a way.
The best part was when they're like,
not via anti-Semitic.
we're going to have the other
conspiracies,
side
but just,
on, and it was
you know,
Sneeko
by
and Nick
humanitarian concerns,
Fuentes.
I think some of the obviously the Carl Schmitt guy, no. Some of these other guys don't want to self-ID as bad people. I don't think. And maybe it can be used as a wedge. I don't know. Is that Pollyanna?
It's a great question. And there was that moment where I'm up against this Iranian American Trump supporter who's dressed like.
Oh, is that the guy with the hat and the mustache? We got to put him on screen now for people who haven't seen him. This guy has the look.
I mean, anyway, props. Can I give props to myself for keeping a straight face throughout all of that? But there's a moment where he defends the killing of Palestinian kids by Israeli snipers. So, well, maybe they weren't so innocent. Maybe they were Hamas. Maybe they were being brainwashed. Yeah. And I look around the room and I say, do you guys agree with that? Shooting kids in the head? They're like, no. And I said, look, even the white supremacists think you've gone too far, my friend. So there's that weird moment where, as you say, they don't want to be seen as like, we're not child killers. We just want to protect our borders. Right. We just want the 14 words. But we don't want to kill. We don't want to kill foreign children. Look, maybe, and look, I'm having this discussion all the time, Tim, as you can imagine, the circles I move in on the left, in Muslim and Arab American circles, I get this all the time. Oh, you should be allying with Candace Owens. What about Tucker? Why haven't you had Tucker Carlson on your show? Isn't Marjorie Taylor Greene great? And I'm saying, no, these people don't give a shit about Palestinians. Their animus towards Israel is driven by anti-Semitism and by isolationism. That is not what our opposition to Israel is driven by or should be driven by. And look, I have so many Muslim friends who tell me like Tucker Carlson's their new hero. And I have to remind them that Tucker Carlson turned up at the Turning Points USA conference the other day and said, I want my country back. I don't want my city smelling like weed and halal. Is what he said. And I was like, that's who Tucker Carlson is. He's not a friend of Muslims. He just happens to be on this anti-Israel move at the moment, which, of course, look, I enjoyed the Ted Cruz takedown as much as anyone else. But the point is, Tucker Carlson, I've as someone on the left, I've never adopted the enemy of my enemy is my friend philosophy that Ronald Reagan and co adopted. That's never been my position. Is Gaza a wedge issue? I think it might be, but not in a good way, Tim. I think it's probably in a bad way.
Yeah. That's sad. All right. Any other final anecdotes? Any little dessert for anybody? A little cherry on top from your experience?
From my experience, no. I mean, other than it's really hard to add anecdotes to what was on camera. I mean, it's very like you're asking about the editing. Forget the editing. Like the 1 hour 40 minutes that went up is. Let me put it this way: I've done a lot of stuff in 25 years as a journalist on both sides of the Atlantic. This is, without a shadow of a doubt, the most insane thing I've ever done in my 2 hours of my journalistic career, without a shadow of a doubt.
All right. Well, thanks for going in the lion's den for us. I disagree with the blue sky people criticize you. I understand the concern about giving them viral moments, but I think people need to see what we're dealing with, and it's a whole. Well, say what you want about the. Michael J. Fox's character in Family Ties, the blue blazer and the briefcase college Republicans. Say what you want about them. We had some flawed views, but it's a different animal we're dealing with now. And, L. Brent Bozell was the pro-Franco guy. Bozell. It was Bozell.
Oh, yeah, Brent's dad. Brent's
dad, yeah. Bozell. It was his admiration for Franco was a rift back in the day. So what's old is new again. Anyway, Mehdi, Hasan, Zateo. Everybody go check out Zateo. I appreciate your work, and we'll be talking to you soon, man.
Open fire!
Why does Israel protect the Druze? On the 16th of July, Israeli jets struck deep inside Syria, not to target Iranian proxies or respond to rocket fire, but to defend a vulnerable minority community, the Druze. For many, it was a surprising and dramatic move that defied immediate explanation. Why would Israel risk a cross-border escalation for an Arab population it doesn't even govern? The answer lies in one of the Middle East's most unusual relationships, one that stretches back many decades to the first years of the Israeli state.
Maybe that's the one I want.
Who exactly
I'm not sure.
are the Druze, and what explains this seemingly unlikely partnership? Hello and welcome. I'm James Kerr-Lindsay, and here I take an informed look at international relations, conflict and security. International relations is full of unusual and often unlikely relationships. Democratic states support dictatorships, secular powers back religious regimes, and long-standing rivals form tactical partnerships. But while we usually think of state-to-state ties, these can also emerge between countries and various non-state, sub-state and transnational groups. A good example is Israel. Over many decades, it's built a fascinating history of engaging with non-state actors and minority groups to balance against wider regional threats. Within this complex web of diplomacy and strategy, the relationship between Israel and the Druze stands out as one of the more unusual and enduring examples of such ties. At home, it's become a symbolically important partnership between Israel as a Jewish state and an Arab minority community. But while this relationship has long had domestic implications, it's now gained international attention through Israel's actions in Syria. To understand this relationship, we need to understand who exactly the Druze are. Ethnically Arab and Arabic-speaking, the Druze are a small, tightly knit religious community that emerged in Egypt in the early 11th century, combining elements of Shia Islam with other religions and philosophies, including the idea of reincarnation. They've long been seen as heretical by mainstream Muslims and faced centuries of persecution. As a result, they've developed a tradition of secrecy, isolation, and pragmatism. Often settling in remote mountainous areas where they could protect themselves, they've long had a history of strategically aligning with dominant powers in order to preserve their security. Today, it's estimated that there are around 1.5 million Druze around the world. While there's a diaspora community with many in the United States, the majority are concentrated in just 3 countries. Most live in Syria, somewhere between 600,000 and 700,000, mainly in the rugged Jabal al-Druze region around Suwaida in the south of the country. Meanwhile, approximately 300,000 to 400,000 live in neighbouring Lebanon, particularly in the Shuf and Mount Lebanon regions. Finally, approximately 130,000 Druze live in Israel, primarily in the Galilee and the Golan Heights areas in the northeast of the country. But just how did Israel become so close to the Druze? Our story begins in 1948 with the partition of Palestine by the United Nations and the creation of the State of Israel. Although the new state was established as a Jewish homeland, it also included several Arab communities. As well as the Palestinians, hundreds of thousands of whom had also been displaced in the process, this also included Sunni Muslim Bedouins as well as the Druze. While many of Israel's Arab citizens felt alienated from the new state, as a community, the Druze took a different path. Seeing an opportunity to secure their position, they chose to integrate, and in 1956 an agreement was reached allowing Druze men to serve in the Israeli Defense Forces. Today, while Bedouins and Palestinians can in fact volunteer, the Druze are the only Arabic-speaking group subject to compulsory military conscription.
Like shit?
And while they once had their own battalion, nowadays Druze soldiers serve in regular combat units as well as in other parts of the IDF, including special forces and intelligence units. Indeed, many have risen to senior ranks, including several generals.
I'm just going to
restart
everything.
Time,
Nobody's
the
watching
have
anyway.
steadily become more integrated into Israeli society.